What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark. Today is season 3, episode 6, and I have a new friend, Mr. Max Goodberg from Zero Amplification, is on the show, and we're gonna get into some seriously nerdy stuff. So if you are into gear, pedals, amps, guitar nerdery, all that, we are going to take a deep dive. So Max, thanks, dude. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. We are going to get into it today, and I'm excited.
Yeah, man. So you know the drill. You've seen this thing. I always am super curious about everybody's path. And like for me, the apex of like where everything started to come together was Pearl Jam and listening to 10 and playing guitar from there. So like what is the thing that kind of propelled you and like you wanted to get started playing music? It doesn't have to be guitar. Could be trombone for all I care. But what was the moment for you?
Well, I think like a lot of people, I got started because my parents bought me piano lessons when I was younger, and they said, you got to go do this thing. And so I started doing it, but like anything they make you do, like I enjoyed a lot of parts of it. I started learning classical music. This was probably, 5, 6, 7 years old, pretty early. But before that, I had pretty strong memories of riding in my dad's van. I think you and I are about the same age. So he had, cassette tapes playing Creedence, Eagles, Rolling Stones, Badfinger, although I was never really that into Badfinger. It's one of his favorites. And, you hear Hotel California come on and you hear the solo, and there's just something in there that's going on. Like, you don't know what it is. I didn't even know what a guitar was. I was like, I like this. I want to do this thing, or at least just be exposed to more of it. And so there was always, something going on around the house, driving around. I grew up in LA, so lots of time in traffic. My dad's banging the dashboard, listening to Green River or something. So that was my kind of early memories, and then transitioned to playing piano. Got sick of practicing, stopped playing for a while, and then got into my early teenage years, and I wanted a black Fender Stratocaster because I was a teenage boy. And so we live right near the Guitar Center on Sunset. My dad took me down, and I got my first Squire Strat, and had a little, the little Marshall Lead 5, like the tiny little mini stack. I had that in my bedroom, so I could turn it up, little 5 watts of power. I didn't even know it was a tube amp at the time. Now looking back, I'm like, that thing's pretty sweet. Should find out where that is. I think it's still at my dad's house somewhere. So did that for a little bit, but then really got into school. I had a pretty rigorous kind of school schedule. I had my degree in engineering, so kind of ditched it for a while. Didn't really think about it. But then when I got into college, I actually ended up, although I majored in engineering, I minored in music theory. So that really sparked my love back for playing again. And so we had, practice rooms at the school where I could go and play piano. So I'd start playing stuff. I was always listening to all sorts of things. I have a really broad set of interests. So from like Coheed and Cambria to, metal stuff, and classical music again, jazz, roots things. I mean, kind of all over the place, as much Dave Brubeck as there was, Iron Maiden. So just a kind of a varied intro. And then I really didn't get back into what I'm doing now, building things, playing a lot more guitar and bass and stuff until a little bit later, probably mid-20s or early 30s.
Okay. So you didn't have that going on during college? Like there wasn't like a spark that was like, oh, maybe I can build amps or build pedals or.
I was always interested in electronics, and part of my engineering degree was in electrical engineering. So I knew all the fundamentals of all of that, but it was never really there. I wasn't playing in bands. I'd go see live shows all the time. We had an amazing co-op. I went to UC Santa Barbara, so there was a lot of like good underground punk shows. I was going to concerts all the time. So there was always that, but I never really had the desire to play then or to build stuff until I was out of college. I was into a regular kind of computer engineering job. And the thing that I really missed was playing. I wanted to get into playing again. And so I needed an amp, and I didn't want to get any solid state amp. So of course, like most people, I was like, well, what amp do I really want? Well, if I could pick anything, I'd probably get an old Marshall, but I can't really afford one of those. I bet I could build one because I know how to solder. I was interested in cars and stuff in high school. I rebuilt an old Pontiac GTO with my dad and all sorts of great stuff like that. So I was always doing stuff with my hands, building things, and then got into like, well, I can just build electronics. So it's a circuit just like anything else. I can download a schematic. I can figure it out. And I found the Metro Amp forum, George Metropolis, unbelievable human being, an amazing forum group of people. And this was kind of when it was at its heyday. So a lot of people starting to make reproduction chassis and put together layouts. And so I started with a layout, just seeing how things were assembled point to point, and then traced that back to the schematic and started learning, okay, well, besides just painting by numbers, like what do all these things do? What's the difference between a Marshall and a Fender? Why is everything a Marshall or a Fender? Why isn't there something else like a high watt or something else? Like, how is that a different architecture? What does that mean? What makes it sound the way it does? Who used it? And so that then brought me through the gear to all the people who played that, who played high watts. Great, interesting. Well, I've never heard of that music before. I'm gonna go check that out. Or, oh wow, I never knew that was a Supro. Or what's orange? Like, how come, and how is orange different than Mad Amp? And just the history was so intriguing to me that as I went through, I'd build the circuits of all of these various things until I got to the point that I understood how all of it worked, and then I started making my own stuff.
Nice. Mario's in here. Cars and guitars, hand in hand.
Man, time and again, all the people I know who are super gear nerds are really into cars or motorcycles or some mechanical thing too. I don't know what it is.
It's like Eli Lester, Turok. He's super into cars and rebuilding stuff, and it makes sense, man.
Analog Man, Mike has a Porsche that he races that he's super into.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's
it's
super cool.
It's painted kind of like a frog. It's like a frog green and yellow, like Porsche. He goes out taking it out on the weekends, always like doing something to it. Yeah, it's cool to watch.
Oh, that's rad, dude. You bring up an interesting point, and it's something that I think about a lot is the different like archetypes in the amp industry, like the different. So like, Fender just released that Tonemaster Super Reverb, which I really want to check out, because when they released the Deluxe and the Twin, I was flirting with the idea of getting one just to have a lightweight, quick combo to go to gigs, smaller gigs, where I could roll in with an amp in hand, pedals, and my guitar on my back, kind of thing. And then I played one, and it was good, but like the reverb was so lush, so quick, that I was like, oh, you guys missed it, man. Like,
I don't know why they put Hall reverb into those in the algorithm. I don't get it. The best reverb in the world is short room or short spring reverb. That's it. That's all I want.
Maybe
plate. Plate is beautiful. I could do plate.
Yeah.
But Hall, all shimmer stuff, like why does it exist? I don't understand.
I guess if you do shoegaze stuff, or if you're a church player, it really makes sense. But like for me, I was hoping it was gonna have kind of like that dwell thing that, like, remember I had one and I sold it. I'm kind of not sorry I sold it because I made so much money on it. But like what was it, the Fender Reverb 1? It was the brown pedal. I had that thing. Yeah. And that thing was amazing. Like, I mean, now granted, the Strymon, I think, does a pretty dang good job. The Flint does a great job. But why didn't they put that reverb into the it's like a tank reverb that they could have put that algorithm in those Tonemasters. But all that to say, the Super Reverb, it feels like they've kind of fixed that issue, the reverb issue. I think they took a lot of criticism on that and changed it.
For me, the big thing with those Tonemaster amps is the speaker. I don't know what speakers they put in the Super Reverb. Do you know?
So yes, it's actually not. They're actual 10-inch Jensens, I think. Because that amp still weighs about 35 to 40 pounds, like the new Tonemaster one. And now, granted, that's still half the weight of a regular Super. But Anderton's just put out a video today, and they were talking about that it's not those, other speakers that they use in the Tonemaster. I can't remember. It's escaping. Would you say they were? Yeah. And Pete was like, actually, what's cool about this is these are Jensens, like in this 410s. So I think it could be cool, man. It's still at a price point I think is out of reach for some people. It's $1,200, but
totally.
But I think what they're doing is cool, and I was hoping they were going to put out a Princeton. First.
Yeah, Princeton's. I was hoping we'd talk about Princeton's today because I feel like I have a unique take on Princeton's. I'm actually not a big fan of Princeton's as they come. I love a 10-inch speaker. Like you can see, I've got a brown Super up there. I've got a Vibral X Reverb, which all these amps have really cool stories. They're all crazy. We can get into any of them that you want later.
Yeah.
But I love 10-inch speakers. The problem with a Princeton is that it was designed for home playing. It's not that it was a budget amp. It has amazing components inside of it, and it's actually a really good footprint. I mean, look what Boogie did with them, right? You can get great tone out of a cabinet that size, and you can leave the 10 in. You don't have to do anything crazy with it. But the challenge with the Princeton is that when does home playing sound good if you have bass in it? And so I think they purposely designed it to have way more bass than any other Fender amp. It's very unique in that way in the schematic, particularly the bass that goes into the phase inverter and into the reverb circuit.
Hmm.
So I've got over right here. It's a early 65 Princeton Reverb, an original one. And I got it thinking it's going to be great. And it just does that ratty overdrive thing. There's like a upper frequency, like mixed with the heavy bass. And it's actually a distortion, but it's a bad distortion. It's like a crossover intermodulation distortion. And it just wasn't doing it for me. And if you change one part, there's one capacitor inside that feeds into the PI, the phase inverter, and you just lower the value of that. It's like the best deluxe reverb you've ever heard. So stock, don't like them. One part change, unbelievable amp, super good.
Really? Okay. What do you think about, so like Wayne from Headstrong, he's making, you know, Princeton, like his little king is a Princeton, and he's usually putting 12s in them. So have you heard any of his stuff?
Yeah, they sound great. And 12s are killer with that circuit. I'm a big fan of the 10s though. I like how 10s project. I think they're tight. They hold things together, especially with an abundance of bass in the front end. I feel like while the 12s will sound deeper, the 10s will kind of push it out a little bit and kind of shelve off some of the low end. So they both sound really good. They're just different to me, and they're kind of for different uses. I like the 10s for recording. I like the 10s at home, you know, in a bigger room. I think the 12s do a better job. There's an interesting relation between the size of the cone and how much the speaker has to move in and out versus the fidelity of the reproduction of that sound, how much energy it takes to drive it, and then of course the efficiency and all the other things that go into speakers. But it's a really interesting topic that you could probably talk forever about that nobody would care.
Oh, dude, it's pretty funny, like how minutia you can get on this stuff. Like all the parts, like talking to Mark Bartel and talking to Eli and all that stuff, and just hearing how much R&D goes into even choosing a speaker. Like I was talking to Mark Bartel after the show with him, just about how like finicky he is about specific speakers and like voicing it to that specific amp. And those dudes spend so much time on that. And I feel like that's what you have to do to kind of find your voice amongst them, like what we were talking about, like Fender, Orange, Marshall, Hiwatt, Park, like all these like amps that we kind of know, and they're like these vaunted, like in the ether ghosts of the industry kind of thing. Like why are we all drawn to like the black panel Fender or the brown panel Fender? Like it's elusive to me as a player because I don't get in that space as much. If I plug into something and I like what comes back, I'm like, oh, this is inspiring. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But like for instance, so like let's talk about some of those, you know, amps behind you. So like you said, so like above, you said is that an old Super? That's like an early 60s Super?
Yeah, so this is a 1959 Brown Super. So they're still making the tweed amps. It's a center volume amp. So the three knobs are normally volume, treble, bass when you start in. This one is bass, treble, volume because they're still working out the circuits and they're going to change it all around. So the first maybe, I think it's 20 or 30 amps that they made were all prototypes. So this is one of the prototype Supers that they made. They have a different port on the back. It says pulse adjust. That circuitry was never actually installed. I still don't know what it was for. I think it was something around the tremolo circuit. But it's also got 5 preamp tubes instead of 6. It has a different harmonic tremolo in it than the actual production ones. And the speakers are P10 Qs from 59. All the transformers are from 59. And the serial number is A00029, I think, or 26. It was like the 26th or the 29th amp they made after changing out of tweeds. So it's pretty unbelievable.
Man. So have you like A-B'd that harmonic trem with like the production line stuff that was from the early 60s? Like,
Yeah, I have. And actually, I have down on the floor here, I built like the Fender reverb tanks, but I put the harmonic tremolo and the Fender reverb into it. So instead of being just the reverb, it kind of does both of those things, which goes really well with the projector amps. You know, if you want to do the Blake Mills thing and you want reverb, tremolo, and it's essentially what the Reverberamo, the Victoria that he uses is.
mm-hmm.
I built one of those, and that goes off of the circuit and the kind of the production amps. And it's hard to pinpoint the differences. I mean, it's kind of like describing food taste, right? Like describing the difference in sound is so personal and different. It sounds different in the room, recorded, all those things. Kind of like another way of getting to the same result. I happen to prefer this one to the particular amp that I played at the time, but yeah, this Super will do everything from quiet to like full on hard rock, all the things. I mean, by the time it's at 6, it sounds like a Marshall. It's unbelievable. I mean, the thing is
Man.
amazing. If I had one amp, that may be the amp that I would keep, but don't hold me to that because I can never have one.
Well, that's what Joey says all the time. Like his Brown Super is like one of his favorite amps, but it's mostly that harmonic trem circuit too. I think a lot of people fall in love with that and the lush. Because I enjoy trem when it's just you set it and forget it. Like I don't ever
Mhm.
change a trem to tap it to the tempo of the tune or try to find because it kind of defeats the purpose of the weirdness of it.
Yeah,
Um, and it's like tremolo is like one of like the most underrated effects out there. Like it can add
totally agree.
so much dimension to your playing. You know what I mean?
It's all the
Um,
movement that you need. It. You know, it's what people try and I feel like get out of a univibe. Like I'd much rather have a harmonic tremolo. And I love trem just mild. You know, it doesn't have to be super crazy. You don't have to get seasick. It's really great for dramatic effect, but if you just have it always on in the background just a little bit, it really adds a lot of depth to your playing and to the tone.
yeah, I agree, man. Do you feel like what's the thing that attracts you to an amp's sound? Like when you've
Oh
plugged
man.
into stuff, like what is it that your ears hear or your heart hears that you
Yeah,
want, to be coming out?
it's a fantastic question. It's here. It's also feel is a big part of it for me. So I love tube rectified amps because they have a little bit of give to them, but you can make a tube rectified circuit that still has the immediacy of what people feel in a solid state rectifier. It's just about the impedance relationship between the guitar and the amp and the design of all of it. You know, when I think about the Vibrolux or the Super or any of these other Fenders, compare that to a high watt, compare that to an Orange or Marshall or any of these other things. Some amps are amazing fidelity amplifiers. They will put out the most crystalline, perfect reproduction of what it is that you're playing. And some people don't like that because you can't hide behind the slowness, the sag, the response of the amp, or what have you. I really like that. So Fenders are really cool, but they were never my favorite amps because they're a little too forgiving, and they don't let enough, in my opinion, of the character of the pickups and the guitar shine through in your playing. It kind of puts this nice sheen on all of it, which is, I think, why a lot of people are attracted to. They're easy to play. They sound great. They're great amps. There's, I'm not getting down on them at all, but you take a 1969 100-watt high watt, or you take a Dumble or a Matchless or any other of those things, and it kind of has a different feel to it. There's an immediacy. There's an attachment between. It's almost like you can think it and it's coming out of the guitar. That's what I really love in an amp. So
Dude, that's totally what Mark Bartel said about the Dumble that he played. He was like, it was a little creepy. I didn't like it because it was that way. It was like almost like it knew what I was gonna play before I played it, kind of thing. I've
yeah,
never I've
yeah.
never played through one, but I can only imagine it's glorious. I mean, I've played through like several matchless, and I've never met a matchless amp I didn't like.
Totally. Totally. The doubles are interesting because they're a Fender amp that's been heavily modded. That's really what it is. It's a Fender Twin that's had a ton of stuff done to it. And a lot of that stuff will give you a lot of different options for tonality or put resistors in variable resistors in places where they're fixed resistors. And that stuff matters. You know, how much signal feeds between one stage and another will completely change the profile of the amp. So it's a really tunable amplifier. You know, I've played Dumbles. I built Dumble clones and stuff, tributes. Um, it's not my favorite amp, and not because it's so immediate. It's like if you took the Fender thing, but you removed the sheen, you cranked up the power. So like you added, like, back to car terms, like you supercharged it, and then you give yourself the control over every possible option within it as a player. It's amazingly versatile. It feels really great. Sounds incredible, but you got to get it up and cooking. I don't love the master volume in it. It's a specific tool for a specific purpose, and I just rather have something that's equally high powered. Like my amps are ridiculous for home use. Like I have a 200-watt high watt. I mean, who has that at home? I play it at home. And it's because the depth of the sound is incredible, because I truly believe in big iron, lots of output tubes. They make things sound more 3D, more lush, better. They don't have to be that much louder, or get a great attenuator, and it works really great. But yeah, for me, that immediacy is important, and it's gotta give you response through the guitar knob range, through clean to overdriven, and it needs to have enough sensitivity on the front end that you can get that through your guitar knob. If you don't have that, if you got to rely on a boost pedal, I have a lot of amazing boost pedals, but if you have to rely on it to get it, I think you're missing something. And just generally with tube amps, I think people don't turn them up enough. You got to get it up, you got to get it cooking, and then turn the guitar down and have it do its beautiful thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's so hard to do that in some like venues and stuff, dude. It's so like I've yet to be able to get that two rock cranked on a gig, even outdoors, man. Like it just like will bury the rest of the band. Like even the drummer, it's so loud that it's like he feels like he has to compete. I'm like, I never turn it up past, I don't know, 3. Like it's just
Yeah,
like a loud amp. Like who do you think's making the
great.
best like Dumble type amps these days, like as far as because there's a bunch of
Dumbly.
companies that are doing it, you know.
Yeah, I don't follow the Dumble thing too closely. I probably wouldn't be the best resource for that. I know Amplify Nation's doing a ton of work around the Dumble thing. I mean, best Dumble type amp. I mean, you just said Two Rock. They have a lot of Dumble type circuits that are unbelievable.
Mhm.
I'd probably just go with Two Rock maybe, but I think it's so important to invest in a good attenuator, and good attenuators are expensive. I mean, you're going to pay as much for a good one as you will an amp, but if you want to get the most out of that amp, it's almost like being you're pot committed at that point, right? Like you get to the point of buying a really great amp, and then you leave it on two. You're not getting what it can give you. So if you spend another 700-800 bucks on a really great attenuator, like my best recommendation, I've tried so many, and the Iron Man 2, the big boy, the 100-watt one that Tone King does. I mean, that thing is amazing. And so you take that and you just knock it down 2 clicks, and it takes off like 6 dB, and that's the 6 dB that people can't stand. Because if you can just take it down two,
Mm.
you don't have to make it bedroom volume, because then you're going to lose everything the amp's doing. But you just take it down a little bit out of pain realm and into digestible, and you get a lot out of the
Pleasure.
amp. It's totally worth it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's I don't own an attenuator. I probably should do that. I mean, there's so many players that I know that use them, like Jimmy Herring, and there's a ton of cats that use that stuff. Um, well, let's because we're gonna run out of time because I'm gonna want to talk about so much stuff. So, all right. So you get out of college,
Yeah.
engineering degree, music theory minor. You're feeling, you know, frisky with wanting to get into maybe building some stuff. What's the first thing you try to build that you, and it doesn't even have to be a success, but the first thing that you were excited about?
First thing I was excited to build, and actually the first full amp that I built was a Marshall JTM 45100, the 4KT66 Jimi Hendrix Monterey, like gigantic amp. Ridiculous first thing for somebody to build, but I like 100-watt amps, and I wanted to build the thing that I wanted in my head, and I had never heard it live before, so I built it, and man, it sounded great. I actually ended up 2 years ago, I ended up selling that amp and rebuilding it the way that I would build it now, knowing what I know. Like 15 years later, what would I do? And I rebuilt the whole thing the way I would build it now, and it was like 2x the amp that I built back then in sound. It was like non-comparable. It was ridiculous, but what a great design, really beautiful. I mean, descend into the basement, so you kind of get Fender amps and Marshall amps all in one. And it was easy at the time because the Metropolis Forum and all those guys were sourcing and giving instructions and all that. So it was a really great primer. So yeah, that was the
Okay.
first thing I got really excited about. The next kind of big evolution in my amp building was it was actually this amp right here, which is probably too small for you to see, but it was a I think it was the first reproduction of the Jimmy Page high watt from the Royal Albert Hall show back when. There was no schematic. There was nothing online. There were, a couple people who had these high watts called SAPs. Most of them were called APs, all-purpose amps. But Dave Reeves made a couple SAP, special all-purpose, and they had the same foot switchable boost in the front, and it was basically the same as the Page amp. I ended up becoming friends with a gentleman over in the UK who now lives in France. Unbelievable guy, this guy Roy. His video, I asked him to make a video of his high watt because he had a 200 watt SAP, which was like unheard of from 69, like early high watt stuff. And back then everything was prototypes. I mean, the my high watt 200 was owned by Titch from Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, and Titch of Pulp Fiction fame, like Hold Tight. There's an old 60s song, Hold Tight. The guitar player, this high watt was made for him. And this 100 watt was like same era. Don't know who it was made for, but it's like a really early serial number. And back then it was kind of like what, I mean, I'm not comparing myself to Dave Reeves at all, but it's kind of like what I do now. I make one-off designs for people who want a specific thing. And then, I'll tweak it, I'll learn as I go. So the high watt 200 that I have, it's got a Vox front end, like same preamp from a AC30, which is crazy. And then this one is pretty close to a production high watt. And the one up here, the kind of next evolution, that page amp, it's totally unique. It's got that switchable boost. And that gentleman, Roy, made a video. It's up on YouTube. You can search for it. It's called, his username was Skaboosh. If you look for Skaboosh high watt, you'll see it. I think it's got like 200,000 views by now or something crazy like that. And from that video and from a couple photos he sent, I ended up building that, and it worked first time out. And I was like, wow, this is what an amp should sound like. Like, I've been playing Marshalls, I've been playing Fenders. High watt is my thing. This is the amp. This has completely blown me away. Why does it do what it does? And how can I learn to not copy this, but make my own designs based on it? And what's unique about it?
I've never played through one, and the only person that I know of that plays them is Pete Townsend. So like, yeah. I didn't even know Jimmy Page used a high watt, to be honest. Like,
2 years, I think. 2 or 3 years. It's like 69 to 71. There was some overlap, but if you watch the Live at Albert Hall show from 70, he's playing the high watt there and for the whole show, and you can hear it all in that recording. It's on YouTube and some other places. Unbelievable concert. And like, that will give you the sound of the high watt. How Pete uses those high watts to play the Who stuff, I don't even know. Like, I can't get those sounds out of high watts that I play. They're amazing machines. But it's the same sort of deal, man. You can't play a high watt quiet, and they're louder than a Marshall. They're as loud as a Dumble. So you really got to get the power section working. That's the key to tube amps, in my opinion. The power section is the thing that gives it the tone. So when Marshall moved away and did JCM 800s, you crank up the preamp, it gets very buzzy. You get that like fizzy thing, and then you just turn it up a little bit, and you're like, all right, I've got distortion, and you're playing. It just doesn't do the thing that those tube amps really have the soul for.
Yeah, we got a question for you. Looking at your Zero right now, I'm old school and want amp tones without a giant pedal train to get there. This looks like the holy grail. So, and Pat's a friend, and
Thanks, Pat.
yeah, you should check out. So, first of all, tell everybody basically where they can find your stuff if they want to source something through you. And
yeah, for sure. I've got a website up that is just an email address. So if you go to zeroamplification.com, you click on the thing, it's going to take you to two places. One, it'll click on the logo. It'll give you zeroamplification@gmail.com. It's my email address. You can send me a note. We can talk what your goals are and figure it out. Otherwise, you can check me out on Instagram. So @zeroamplification, all one word. You'll be able to find the kind of log of what I build and the things that I do. That's the best place to find me. I'm still doing things kind of one-off. Yep, totally. DG played a ton of high watt. If you get into the high watt thing, it's a deep rabbit hole. You'll start exploring. You'll find out like, oh, wow, I had no idea that person played a high watt. And the community of people that love high watts are fervent. You should check out anybody who wants a new production high watt. If you want to buy something brand new that will be as good as an old high watt, go check out High-Tone. It's run by Mark Huss, who's an amp building legend, absolute mentor of mine, even though he probably doesn't know it. They make incredible stuff.
Yeah, Mario's having a field day. I love
so
that
true.
guy.
I have a 4x12 that's got 4 Fane 100-watt speakers in it, so the 400 watts of speakers can handle the 200 watts that the high watt 200 puts out. And I turned it up once when my neighbors weren't around, and I turned it up to a decent level. I'm talking like 2/3 up on the master volume, which is insane. I'm in a room that's 20 feet by 20 feet. I mean, bananas. It walked the 4x12 across the floor. I literally had to push the half stack back up against the wall because it started vibrating out. I'm like, I need to port this cabinet or nail this thing to the floor. Otherwise, I can't play it.
It's like that old picture of the when Jimmy's like texts are like holding that, Marshall back while he's ramming it into it. Except it does it on its own like a washing machine, apparently.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh my gosh, dude. And I've never played anything over 50 watts, so I don't know that I would even. I don't think the one time I've played an amp that was 50 watts that felt super loud and felt like, oh my gosh, it felt like a nice warm blanket around me was I took my amp in. I had a Fuchs that I had mega issues with. Like, I love that company and I love everything they do, but I sent that thing back and forth 3 times and we just couldn't get it right. So they were just like, all right, well, just give it back to us, whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember I had it with this tech in town in Baltimore. He was like a big deal builder and like technician for amps. And he was like, oh, you should check this thing out. I have this super lead and a 412 cab, whatever. And I think it was a 50 watt, I'm pretty sure. But I'd never played through a 412 cabinet before. Wow, that's a big difference, man. It's a big difference because I only played through 112s and I had a 212 for one. I had a Mesa Boogie closeback 212 when I used to tour. And that thing was great. I loved that cabinet. But wow, the experience of playing with 412s is next level.
If you ever want a killer 412 cab, the old early 70s orange cabs are unbelievable. And they're not as expensive as the same era Marshalls. They're built like crazy. Same thing with high watt cabs. I mean, thick, heavy walled cabinets. The cool thing about the orange cabs that they had greenbacks that were not put in any other production amp except for, I think, some Carlsbros had them. But it's a T1217. It's the heavy magnet 75 hertz. So it's the lead cone with a heavy magnet speaker. And that was never in the Marshall production cabs that they put out. If you ever got 75 or a heavy magnet speaker, is a 55 hertz bass speaker. And that heavy magnet 75 hertz greenback speaker is really something special. They sound so good.
I gotta experiment more with that stuff, man. I really do. Like I don't spend enough time. I feel like I fill my life with other things like video games and movies.
I'm gonna be your 100-watt pusher, Mark. So apologies to your family in advance.
One day, man. I know that Jerry Garcia used to play. I think his amps were like $150, 150 watt. Like he had a weird setup. I don't know what he was playing through. He had a twin. I think Jerry Garcia played through twins for a long time too. But
people, it's like a commonly quoted stat online in forums and stuff that the sound difference between a 50 watt and 100 watt is 3 dB. That's it. It's a 3 dB difference. Now, dB is a logarithmic scale, so that could be kind of loud. But if you get a good attenuator like the Iron Man 2, you knock it down 3 dB, you're back to 50 watt levels from a sound pressure perspective. But the depth of the tone is going to be a whole different animal. I promise you, you will never go back. Once you do 100 watts, I mean, like Mick from that pedal show, he knows you can't go back from it. It's just, what am I doing with 2 6v6s? I can have 4 EL34s or 4 KT66s or 4 KT88s in this high watt.
You all got to stop it, and this man's got to stop it too, Mario. I'm gonna tell my wife on you. Let's get into like the Bell and Hal stuff and like the film projector too. So that I'm a big Blake Mills fan, and when I first heard that little ammo box that he had from like Hi Ho, like the era when he released Hi Ho.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck is he playing through? Because there are so many. If you listen, if anybody that watches this video after the fact or now hasn't heard Blake Mills' Hi Ho record, it is a production masterpiece. The way that album, I mean, the songs are great, but like if you really want to get into like the chewy nature of his guitar tone and even the drums and the bass and the strings, everything, how that album was recorded. But when I found out that it was an old film projector amplifier that they changed into a guitar amp, I was like, what? So
it sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy. And I know that you work on these and you do this. So like explain to me the mysticism behind the film, like the Bell and Howell specifically, you know, and why
Yeah.
people like that one in particular. But like, just explain to me what's going on with this thing.
Yeah. Okay. So the interesting thing, so I got into projector amps, same reason. Hi-Ho came out, unbelievable record, amazing tone, great player, great singer, strings, all of it. It's got the whole deal. And I was like, okay, well, this is cool. What's he playing? I got to figure it out. Every time I hear a really amazing song, the first thing that I want to go do is what's the gear on that? I'm just obsessed with the
Me
tone
too.
in the song as much as the playing and anything else, you know. So I hear the guitar line, I'm interested in it, I check it out, read the same thing. It's some old projector. Well, that's weird. What's the projector? So then I start figuring it out and, you know, find out the model number. People are like, oh, don't say the model number. It's 385. People buy up all the 385s. Turns out they're right. People do buy up all the 385s. But there are other Bell and Howells that have the same amplifier inside of them. So you can actually uh, pick up other projectors if you want to convert them and get a similar thing. But you know, I think there's a mystique behind it because of Blake and the playing and how amazing that record is. But the reason it's attractive from a builder standpoint is it's got everything you need that builders don't like dealing with. So it already has amazing old transformers, which any really good builder will tell you that the transformer is a massive component of the amplifier. I mean, we could talk a lot about transformers, and maybe we should. I have opinions about transformers that run deeper than any of the people watching this will want to know. But there's a couple people who get really into transformer nerdery, and it's a whole topic. So they have amazing transformers. They were made by Schumacher, same people who ended up making the transformers that are in blackface Fenders. So there's a lot of similarity there, right? The steel that they used, the wire, the enameled wire that's wound around the cores, you know, all that stuff, paper bobbins. Like, it's all the same stuff that is in the best guitar amps that everybody loves. It's in this projector amp. Also, it's got a small compact chassis, which is great. So you talked about wanting a small amp that you can grab and go. I mean, look at the size of this amp. It's tiny. It's a tiny little thing. And let me know, I can move my camera.
It's like a lunchbox, kind of like the Tiny Terror. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's like almost the exact same size, the Tiny Terror. But it's got anywhere from 15 to 25 watts, depending on how you work it and what you can get out of it. Probably more like 50 to 20 watts or so. And it's allowed 15 to 20 watts. I mean, you get up past volume dot number 3 out of 10, and it's like, okay, enough already with that amp. It's loud without the attenuator. So it's got a small chassis. It's compact. It's got amazing transformers in it. It's got the same tube complement that many of the best amplifiers in the world have. It's got two 12AX7s. It's got two 6V6s. It's got one 5Y3 rectifier. Same setup as a Tweed Deluxe. It sounds great, but what they do a little bit differently is they kind of tone down some of the amplification factor in some of the stages, and they add what I think is the key component to why these amps sound so great and feel so great is they add a pentode input tube. So the first tube that your guitar is going to interact with, and it's a pentode, just like you know, the EF86 Voxes everybody goes nuts for. It's like same deal. It's a pentode single amplification stage, and they're just amazing sounding things. Like, I am a fan of pentode preamps until the sun sets. It's just unbelievable. So because you have a single pentode, you can change the input impedance between the guitar and that. So like similar to how a fuzz face has an input impedance that lets you feel very dynamic and responsive. It's got great cleanup. It feels like it's kind of in your guitar, right? You hear that a lot about really great fuzzes. It's that impedance relationship. It's almost directly coupled. The grid, which is the thing that controls the signal and the tube, is almost directly coupled to your pickup. So that it's as good as it gets as far as like when I play the string, the signal is exactly in the front stage of the amplifier. And from there, then you have a tone stack, which sounds fine. It's got, you know, bass one way and treble the other. And then you've got a really great power section. And the cool thing about this amp is, I'll hold this up to the camera. I have the original Filmo Sound brochure from 1957. And you can see, I'll hold it up here. It says, I don't know if you can read it. It says high fidelity sound. It's got a whole paragraph about how they built this thing for fidelity. The 385, cool. 15-watt amplifier produces enough volume for large halls and auditoriums with only 5% distortion and maximum output. So they designed this thing. I mean, this projector, right? You think like a film projector. Well, they're not that expensive now. They're pretty cheap, whatever. A couple $100 you can buy an old projector. I mean, at the time that this came out, it's $330 for this projector in 1957, which is
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
This was as good as you could get in the late 50s. You'd invite the family over. You'd put on first of all, you had to have a camera that could record in sound, right? Not just silent camera. You'd have a sound recording camera, and then you could play that back on your projector. And it was like watching television, but you controlled it at your house. This was novel stuff in the late 50s. Really amazing. So they built it with the best of the best and with high fidelity in mind. And so getting back to our earlier discussion, what do you look for in an amp? Why does it feel so good? Why is there lore around it? It was designed for high fidelity, just like high watts have massive partridge transformers in them that are meant for hi-fi systems. And they can reproduce from 20 hertz to 20,000 kilohertz tones. And they say, well, guitar doesn't go above 10K, whatever it might be, but the harmonics do. They go above and below what the guitar can produce. And so when you get into things like breakup, distortion, that harmonic content lives outside of what the guitar is directly producing, which is why I firmly believe, and I like to tell people, that amplifiers are instruments. You play an amp the same way you play a guitar. If I had a choice between 10 amps and one guitar or 10 guitars and one amp, I would pick one guitar all day long, partially because I believe you should get used to your interface and play your guitar really well and not change that part of it up, but mainly because the amp will make your guitar do things that another amp won't.
Dude, 100%. I find that every time I plug into the Two-Rock, something new happens, Yeah. So is there something to be said about like some of these amps that might be squashing that signal and losing those harmonics? It's like almost like it's choking the life out of your tone?
Yeah, it's not going to reproduce harmonics in the same way. So we were talking about dumbles. One of the coolest parts in the dumble circuit is normally there's a without getting too deep into it, there's a fixed resistor that feeds the signal into the phase inverter. What the phase inverter does is you've got two 6v6s in it, right? So you're making a sine wave. It's push-pull. So one's amplifying while the other one's shutting down, and they kind of do this together. And when you average all that out, you get one smooth amplification. Kind of like AC versus DC, similar sort of thing in power. So if you're inverting the signal, you have one signal that is going like this, and you have another signal that's going the opposite, and they're feeding the two output tubes so that while one is going up, the other one's going down. And so typically you just have a fixed resistor that goes in there, and you hope that things work out well. Like tubes are very forgiving, way more forgiving than fuzz pedals, transistors. Bias is simple. The tube will work in even very harsh circumstances. So if you're tuning an amp, like what does that mean? We always hear like, well, Dumble would tune an amp to what a player wanted to hear. Part of that is changing some values like bigger or smaller bright capacitors, making things a little bit brighter, a little bit darker. Distortion comes on sooner or later, depending on what you want it to do. But this one PI spot, if you tune where that balance is between where the up is going up and the down is going down in the two different tubes, they're going to cancel out those harmonics, or they're going to amplify those harmonics. And so what the Dumble has is it has an adjustable resistor in there as part of the circuitry. And so you, the builder, can adjust where that balance point is in the phase inverter. And that makes all the difference. So amps that can do that harmonic thing, they're not going to limit those harmonics. And similar to people who love to play without compressors because they feel like it squashes everything they're doing with their fingers and the small sounds you get out of it. Other people love compressors. Same thing with amps. If you hate compressors, you're going to love a dynamic amp where you can tune all those harmonics, most likely. I'm not a big compressor guy. I like to hear all those weird little things. I like to control the dynamics of the sound with my fingers and with the pick and all those things. But yeah, I think that's an analog that hopefully makes sense.
No, yeah, totally. Well, is it hooked up? I know you have your guitar. I want to hear a little bit of it. I know you're working on building one right now. So is this one completed? Like you're working on it. You've got it where you want it?
Yeah. So I've got two here. I've got this one, which I'm plugged into right now, and this is hooked up to a JBL 15-inch speaker, just a D130 that I've got in an old Super extension cab under here, and it's plugged through the Iron Man, so hopefully it's not going to overload. Hopefully you can hear that okay.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Okay. So just a nice high fidelity clean sound, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. If you turn it up just a little bit, and then we may have to turn the attenuator down, but just with, that's one dot on the volume knob. I mean, you can hear it's probably destroying the camera mic, but that's all the goodness right there. And then you can turn the guitar volume down, and so
it
does the whole clean to mean.
Yeah, but it has like this definition and attack that I'm here, at least through here. I mean, it's hard if I'm not in the room, but that's super cool. Do you have that hooked up to that reverb unit and that tremolo unit too?
I do, actually.
Can we hear that?
Yeah, I can turn on some trem for you.
Yeah, dude. That dude, I'm gonna have to get you to build me one. I may not do 100-watt, but that is right up my alley, dude. Like that, I love that Walrus 385 pedal.
It's great.
It blew me away, dude. Like I was not expecting. I don't know why Walrus doesn't push that thing harder. Like it's amazing.
It pulls a lot of the really great kind of gritty overdrive character you can get with these amps out, and it puts it in pedal format. It's a really organic sounding thing. It's awesome. I love that pedal. This is like taking the photograph of the thing that you're looking at and then going to Yosemite and seeing it in person. It's like all the difference in the world between the two. So if you like the 385, you'll love the 385. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So this amp is basically the same spec as the Blake Mills amp. It's a similar sort of vibe to it in the way that Austin Hooks does it. He builds amazing amps. I took some of the styling cues for this directly from his styling, which he came up with, which I love so much. He puts the lens in the chassis and then puts the power light behind it. So when you turn the amp on, you get the light flowing from the projector lens, which is such a great idea. It just felt like the right thing to do with this amp because it retains the soul of what it came from. And that's so important to me. And even though obviously that's his design cue and I give him full credit, I would never try and rip off anyone's design. I thought it was such an important thing to what the amp is and where it comes from. People buy these projectors and then they throw away the projector part. And that projector part, I mean, it's cast metal. It's beautiful. The aluminum pieces are amazing. I never throw the projectors away. I will always either donate the projector like free on Craigslist to someone who's got 16mm footage, go to an old age home, like an elderly folks home, and see if they have old family movies they'd want to show on it. I mean, the projectors work great. It's why I like to rehouse the amps as well. Keep the projector with the original housing. That small speaker doesn't work great for guitar anyway. Give it back to whoever could use it and let it live as a projector. You want to use the sound part of it, and the person who's going to take the projector knows it, they don't need it, all the better. And then, give it 2 lives.
I agree, dude. And there's something funky about keeping a part of that history attached to the amp, even if it's non-functioning. I'm
100%.
a sentimental dude, so I'm all into that stuff. But
you and me both, my friend.
All this 100-watt talk. Mario's throwing shade again. I have to get 100-watt out. I think honestly, dude, if I had the money to spend it and have you build me that, or get 100-watt head or something like that I don't even know what it would be, but I would go funky. I'm more and more as the older I get, I'm getting less commercial. I'm trying to find things that can help me in my niche and what I do. I did I show you that picture that my grandfather's guitar, that old Harmony?
No. Oh wait, yeah, actually I think so.
So that I posted it on Instagram, but that thing's from
Yeah, that's right.
1939.
We were talking about it.
Yeah, that thing's from 1939. It needs a lot of work. But I'm gonna get it fixed up, dude, because I mean I kind of like weird, funky, random stuff, you know? Like if I could be recording with that and carrying my grandfather with me, you know, through another 40 years, you know,
It's all
that'd be
that
cool.
matters, honestly. Like anybody can go out and buy a replica super lead and go rule the world with amazing tone. And it sounds amazing. It's super great. But if you can get something that you can make your own, it's going to help you express yourself and be a better player. Or especially if you have something sentimental like that that came from your grandfather, like it doesn't matter that it's not uh, an L5 or something. Like that makes no difference. It has a soul to it. It has a history and it's connected to you and it deserves to have that live on. I'm a big proponent of like these old things we like for a reason. You know, they have souls, they have all the hours. You know, somebody went to the store and picked it out and was so excited to get that thing and then learned and played on it. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they had an intention to and they put it away. You know, maybe it was bought by somebody who was, you know, killed in Vietnam and then it finds its way to somebody who then carries on that tradition. That stuff matters. And these things have lives and we get to be custodians of them for a short period of time. And I think that's fantastic.
No, it's rad, dude. I really like the idea of repurposing things too, like the whole film projector. Like I like, and not only for sustainability, you know, reasons, but like just to have something that is like can live on and have a second life, you
Totally.
know? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's cool.
This amp, the one that I just played, that's kind of like your traditional 385 conversion. It's like a typical thing. Ever since I got into what a great platform it is, you know, if you talk to other people who've done a lot of projector style work, you kind of get bored of the traditional conversion. Then it's a great platform. Like I mentioned, it's got all the raw materials there, but you take out the Bell and Howell stuff and you don't just adapt it for guitar and you know recap it and do all the things to convert it, but you actually redesign it a little bit. It's an amazing platform to do that with, put your own spin on it. So like Tony over at Tex Amps, I mean, he has the Burning amp that he's worked on. His work is unbelievable. The knowledge that he has, he's such a generous guy and an amazing technician. Everybody check out Tex Amps if they want. But his signature amps are unbelievable. But he kind of started a similar sort of deal. He worked with Colin Cripps on, you know, an old Bernie amp. It's named after Bernie Ronig, I believe was his name. He did some of the early projector amp conversions. And then he kind of said, you know what, I'm going to scrap all the guts from this thing and I'm going to rebuild it and kind of make it my own. I'm going to keep the pentode front end. I'm going to keep the 12AX7s and the power tubes, but I'm going to make it my own thing. And so I've been doing that on my own as well. And I've come up with something that I'm super proud of that I feel like takes that to the next level. So it has all the things that we just heard, but it's got a little bit more to it. It's got more of that transparency, more of the immediacy, and it's got a really unique kind of negative feedback circuit. So for those who don't know what negative feedback is, because that's a lot of words, basically you've heard it like if you hear out of phase in guitar pickups, where it kind of has that hollow tone to it, it's because signals are canceling each other out, like I talked about with the phase inverter. Negative feedback is essentially that same concept. You re-inject the signal back into the amplifier and it's going to cancel out some of those unwanted harmonics. Now, if you put more negative feedback in an amp, it's going to be more tame. It's going to be more reliable, you know, predictable, etc. If you take that negative feedback out of the amp, it's going to be louder. It's going to be grittier. That cancellation is not happening. It's like boxes don't have negative feedback in them. A lot of the AC30, like the traditional AC30 design, has no negative feedback. That's what that means when you hear that. Just amplifying, not cleaning it up, not making it pretty. It just is what it is. And so I found a way where you can do a similar sort of negative feedback trick and you can tune it. I put it on a switch in this amp and it basically sets the thing on fire, which is amazing. So I'll turn this one on. You can hear a little bit of this one. This is not out yet. The first one of these conversions that I'm going to do for somebody is leaving next week, I believe. But this one was kind of my prototype.
Snap.
Okay. I'm
Oh yeah.
But it's got like a nice little tone to it. This is with all the stock negative feedback in it. Okay, pretty good. Sounds great, like the 385 does. Then if you flip that switch, you'll hear. Oops, tear it down.
Oh yeah, you can hear it, man.
So it's super fun.
Yeah, you can hear it. Wow, that's crazy, dude. I mean, even when you were just playing chords right there, like when it was breaking up, that was pretty intense, man. Like comparatively speaking, you know, was that at the same volume as the one below?
It's lower volume. So the one below is on like a 5 out of 10, and this one's on like a 3. So if I put the negative feedback on, which I think it is right now, pretty clean. It's got maybe a little bit of hair on it. Then if you pop it back off again,
dang,
it retains
dude.
all the clarity, the string to string clarity, and all the things that you want to hear. You know, it's all still there. It's just raw. It's a ton of fun.
That's so cool, dude. Max, I mean, that is like that's an amp sound that I feel like is as classic as time is endless kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like a any guitar player that would plug into that and be able to get those two specific tones just from a flip of a switch. What else do you need?
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's a single channel amp because I don't like channel switching or adding all those extra parts in it. The more parts you put in an amp, I feel the farther away from the sound you are. So try and keep it as simple, as bare bones as possible. Keep the impedance relationship between the guitar and the amp as much in the player's favor as you can. And then just let it do what it does. Let those harmonics ring out, tune the phase inverter so that it's going to work right. One of the biggest parts of the amp. And then use really good quality transformers. You really can't go wrong. But, you know, it took me, I don't even know how long at this point, 20 years to figure that out after building countless amps and reviewing all the designs. And, you know, I would say encourage anybody out there who's interested in this stuff to just start tinkering, start figuring it out, you know, do it safely. There's a lot of, you know, deadly voltages, all the things. Don't get hurt. But if you learn, you can take classes now. There's like amp building classes. You can go build an amp. Go do that in a supervised environment. And like learn about this gear if it's interesting to you, because it's really a fulfilling hobby.
Yeah, that's so cool. And everybody that's watching this, post this live, you know, show, make sure you get on Instagram and follow Zero Amplification, because there's a lot of cool stuff that you always post about what you're doing. And you know, you do like, you know, like we've been saying in here, and I put this up earlier, but like dropping amp wisdom, you know, and here he goes again, like a box or engine in cars when you were talking about. But I mean, I feel like I'm still learning so much about like what my gear does. And, you know, I think it's a fun time to be exploring that stuff for me. Because for a long time, I feel like I spent so many years like really trying to be a better songwriter and a better guitar player, and, you know, just really working on that. So like right now I'm in this period of my life where I'm like trying to find what I like. Like, do those amps like single coils too? And does it break up as early?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because, you know, I'm a single coil guy. So
yeah, there's such range in the gain structure that you'll be able to get a little more headroom out of it with single coils, which is great. You know, I'm playing a Les Paul right now just because that's my deal. I got this
that's a
teal
cool
metallic
finish. Yeah.
57. Yeah, this thing is amazing. It's got whiz pickups in it. It's kind of what I test all my stuff through. It's my control guitar. I know how this guitar sounds. I can play a circuit with it and know exactly what it's going to do.
Yeah. We got
So
another
yeah,
question.
Yeah.
What's the Mayer amp type that you work on or you make? Do you make anything that's more Mayer-y?
Which mayor? I mean, not who, but like what style? I mean, I would say that the
Continuum?
mayor thing. Yeah, the mayor thing to me is, I mean, I've got a Silverface Showman reverb head, like dual Showman reverb, that does the mayor thing perfectly. Like honestly, I'd go for one of those rather than paying me to make something for you. Like it'll be cheaper, and those amps aren't expensive. I mean, I think I bought that amp for like $850, $900, something like that. I mean, nobody wants Silverface dual Showman reverbs. They're too big, they're too loud, all the things. But I just throw it through the aux box, And I mean, you want like depth, clarity, the Mayer deal. I mean, that's what it is. He used a dual professional at home, and I think on some live streams and stuff, which is basically just a twin. I mean, it'll do it all. Those things get a bad rap for being shrill and all that, but I'd be happy to mod one of those for you to sound more Mayery. That's an easy job to do. So I do that for people a lot. I'll either repair stuff they've got, I'll mod it to it's not quite what I want, but can you make it a little more like this? Or I do builds from scratch. But yeah, for anybody who's interested in doing anything, just hit me up on Instagram or on email and let's talk.
Yeah, man. Now Mario is gonna want to do it. Man, he keeps saying stuff. You keep your mouth shut, brother. I do need to hear that. I mean, my favorite tone on the planet Earth till the day I die will be When Cries Mary. I know that's cliche, and I know that everybody says that, but like, there's a reason everybody says that. I mean, that's my test. When I get on stage, I get my amp to a point and I play the and I'm like, that's it. I'm good. There's my clean tone. You know, that's my test every time. So
Mark, I'll build you a JTM 45-100 or a low powered Tweed Twin, and I mean, your life will never be the same.
Dude, I'm sure. All you guys need to kind of chill out because I'm supposed to go to the studio in Nashville, and I'm trying to raise money for that first. But I think I'll probably, amps are funny because even though I'm like, I lust after stuff and like, I'm like, oh, that would be great, especially to use on recording or, if I'm doing this and that. I think that I get in a rabbit hole sometimes where I try to convince myself I need something. And then like, and then I'll also like have that little devil on my shoulder say that, but then like whatever, the little goblin on this side, because he's still not good. He's not helping. But I think he's like, dude, you have a 2-rock. It's okay. You're fine. I'm like, no, I'm not.
It is okay.
But
well,
I don't know.
You should get it when you're having dreams about it, when you're trying to fall asleep at night, and that the picture of that thing pops into your head, or you can't get it out. That's the point where you need to try it out. If you don't like it, the great thing about all this gear, especially good quality gear, is you can just sell it again. I mean, you don't have to keep it.
That's true. Yeah, thank you so much for all the wisdom, Max. I mean, that was a lot. And what's funny is like this was so informative and educational, and like you and like Jesse Honig from 29 Pedals.
Like, he's amazing. I love that guy.
Yeah, all this stuff is like so over my head, but you guys explain it in a way that makes it more palpable and like helpful in terms of being a guitarist. And it's awesome. I thank you so much. So, and then John, thanks for coming, buddy. Yeah, you might have missed all the 100-watt shade that's being thrown at me, but
if you haven't physically felt an amp do that to you, if the bass hasn't gone through, and you know what I'm talking about, if you have, it's an experience that all people should wield at one point in their life.
Yeah, well, we'll see. One day I'll be Thanos. All right. Let's do this thing, man. You ready to do the lightning round get down?
I'd love to.
All right, here we go. First question's always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
I gotta go probably Lennon, but not for the Yoko stuff.
Okay. Regular floss or water flosser?
Water flosser all day, every day, and I mix in a little bit of the mouthwash in with the water. Ooh.
Ooh, I don't know about that trick. I'm gonna try that tonight.
Just a splash. A little splash of mouthwash in with the water dilutes it. You'll never have a cleaner mouth.
Ooh, okay. That just got me excited. I'm such an adult. Cheetos or Doritos?
Man, I gotta go Doritos Cool Ranch. Or Flamin' Hots. Flamin' Hots are gonna win. I'm doing Flamin' Hots.
All right, cool. Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones. I know it's weird, but gotta do it.
All right. Thunderstorms or snowstorms?
Ooh, thunderstorms every time. So much drama.
Okay. In a pool, would you rather jump off a high dive or go down a water slide?
Water slide.
All right. Laundry or dishes?
Laundry every time. I think didn't your last guest said the smell? I'm going for that too.
Okay. Okay. Animaniacs or Bugs Bunny show?
Oh, like the classic Bugs Bunny cartoons?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Bugs Bunny all the time.
All right, cool. NES or SNES?
NES, 100%. I'm an old soul.
Me too. All right, and then the last one, and you know this, so it's kind of cheating, but album that you could erase from your mind. Never heard it before.
I gotta go T-Rex Electric Warrior. It's the perfect record.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Mark
Why is
Bolan,
it the perfect
man.
record?
Mark Bolan. Start to finish, you can't listen to one song without listening to all of them. I actually think Bang a Gong is not the best song on that record, but just everything about the tone, the singing, the arrangements. I mean, it's just, it grooves, it rocks, it's quiet, it kind of takes you through all those different vibes. Hey Ho does the same thing, takes you through all those different experiences in one album. It's short enough so you could do it, but it's definitely in my top 3 albums of all time. I'd love to hear it again for the first time. Either that, or I've also thought about maybe like Funhouse by the Stooges would be another good one to hear for the first time. I'm a big rock and roll guy.
Yeah. Me too, man. I grew up on all that stuff, man. It's like, it's so weird how much of a departure I made, like moving into like the world of, I mean, like growing up listening to Pantera and Metallica and like Seattle stuff and getting super dark listening to Alice in Chains and have my parents be like, "Are you okay?"
Oh man,
you know,
Murder City Devils and Name in Blood would be another one I put on that list. Talking about
I don't even know what that is, but it sounds pretty cool.
Oh, Murder City Devils, man, what an amazing band! So many good records. And so, by the way, before we say goodbye, I wanted to flip the script on you. I have some lightning round questions for you because nobody ever does that back to you.
Okay,
are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, Captain America or Red Guardian?
Captain America.
See, I'd go Red Guardian. Only use a finger pick on your index finger forever, or never use your index finger to play guitar again.
Oh, I would have to go with the pick. I can't. That's my finger, man. Especially playing slide. That's like that finger and my thumb are like the main things I use to play slide. So,
see, I think I'd go no index finger because then I'd just learn to be a genius like Django.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just super lazy. I'm not willing to do that.
All right, David Lee Roth or Paul Rogers? Paul Rogers is Bad Company and Free, in case.
Yeah. Probably Paul Rogers.
Yeah, good call.
His voice is golden, man.
Lightly bite your tongue every time you eat something, or always have a hangnail?
Oh. I'd probably go with the hangnail. Just because I feel like mouth injuries are so annoying. Like I hate mouth injuries. It's funny when my kid she'll bite the inside of her cheek or something, and then she'd be like, "Oh, like this is gonna be like this forever." I'm like, "No, dude. Like mouth injuries heal fast. Well, but they heal fast. But if this isn't gonna heal, I can't hang."
Oh no, it'll heal, but you're gonna bite your tongue every time you eat something. Every time.
Yeah, no, I can't get down with that. No.
All right, hangnail it is. Last question. Gummy bears or nerds?
Nerds.
Good choice.
I'm not a huge gummy kind of a person. Like my brother, I remember like growing up, my brother loved like gummy worms and stuff, and I always just thought like the consistency of that stuff is gross. I like other kind of gummies, but not gummy bears. So
also talk about biting your tongue. I mean, you want to bite your tongue, eat some gummy something.
Oh, dude, yeah. But you know what always used to creep me out? It's like when my friends would have like a bag of gummy worms and like doing that thing where it's like they put like 3 in and like, blah! I'm like, ew. I feel like you're eating plastic, man. Like at least like like Sour Patch Kids, I can get down with some Sour Patch Kids. But speaking of which, are you into like stand-up comedy at all?
Yeah, totally.
Do you know about Nate Bargatze?
Yeah, of course.
Have you seen both of his new his specials that are on Netflix? That whole thing, his whole bit about that, like when he's talking about what was the bit I'm talking about? About eating Sour Patch Kids and how he's at the doctor and the doctor's like, "Well, what are you eating?" And he's like, "Well, last night I had some Sour Patch Kids." Like, "Oh, you just like had a little packet or something?" He's like, "No, it was a bag." And he's like, "Okay." And he's like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Don't eat those before bed." He's like, "Well, can you eat them in bed?" I ate them in bed. And he's like, "You can't do that, buddy." Yeah.
That and his whole piece about going to the reptile show also is
Oh
like a
my
classic.
gosh. Yeah.
Unreal.
That's so good. His stuff is so good. I like the fact that that dude worked totally clean. There's not many clean comedians that I watch that I've laughed that hard. Like he's
Yeah,
really
totally agree.
smart, the way his delivery and like the way he like weaves jokes together. Oh, it's so good.
I miss Mitch
Anyway.
Hedberg. Talk about working clean and hilarious jokes.
Oh my God. Yeah. That guy.
The
Yeah.
master.
He was a saint. All right. So everybody, make sure you check out Zero Amplification. Definitely on Instagram. Obviously, Max is a wonderful human being. You can, DM if you want to do anything with any kind of amps or. And are you building pedals too, like still or?
Oh yeah, I'm building. I build fuzz pedals all the time. I've been doing a ton of Tonebenders recently. I'm going to put out a bunch of Tonebender Mark Ones coming out soon, which are going to be amazing old rare components and stuff. I just did some Mark III stuff. I got this little guy, which is currently available. This is a Mark III Tonebender, one of a kind. I'm calling it the Wabi Sabi series. So it's like purposefully done, not perfect in the graphics.
Yeah,
So
that's a
so
buddy
just a
guy, man.
one-off, uses some cool transistors. Yeah, so I pretty much do it all. I mostly just do fuzz pedals just because that's my jam. It's my favorite kind of pedal. That's all I do. So yeah, fuzz-based Tonebenders, it works. Let's get it going.
Nice. Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time. This was super fun. Very, like I said, educational, informative. I'm sure everybody's going to love hearing all these stories. So everybody, check out Zero. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Mark. Bye, everybody.